Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. If you are in the United States, watching from the United States or in Europe, I think it's afternoon to in Yaounde. If not, it's evening in Yaounde. But welcome to yet another edition of the Lambom Show. Today is Saturday, November 5th, 2022. And we have entered the critical stage for the World Cup competitions coming up in Qatar in under 2 weeks. And so, as is to be expected, we are going to be doing some analysis on the preparations of the African nations that are going to the World Cup. As always, point person, the main man. Welcome, Fawn. How are you today?
Lambert, good evening. Because it's already 10 minutes past 5 in the nation's capital, Yaounde. Well, I'm doing great. Just a little tired because last night I was off to some event where I was the MC of foundation launch here in this very hotel in which I'm seated and chatting with you. And it was a very long night, so you can imagine the kinds of things that would have featured in the program. So I just woke up just not long ago, and I said I should come downstairs and get to you to answer the questions. This is, of course, a Saturday, and as usual, it is a Lambom show, as you've rightly indicated, and I'm rare for that. And I think if all goes well, you're having Raymond Elume and Emmanuel Bankolo coming in. But as we speak, those two gentlemen are analysts on CRTV, and on Saturday afternoon, CRTV has live broadcast of some of the European matches. I think they have one this afternoon from the English Premier League, and then there's another that comes up later on from the Bundesliga. And both gentlemen are supposed to be analysts on those matches, and so they're having one leg in the Lambom Show and the other leg at CRTV. So imagine that's going to be something like that.
That's a great competition to have with CRTV. But of course, welcome our dear friend. Warm greetings to you, Sir Lambert, and veteran Echekiye says, I can't afford to miss this hair-raising show. Thank you, Ivo, and hope you are doing well in Ireland. So, it seems as if food makes news every day. And we woke up this morning to some new thing about putting an end. In preparation for this week's show, we're going to talk about the document from France, kind of asking Fecafoot to respect the terms of the contract with the Le Coq Sportif. And it seems as if they have been overtaken by events because the president of Fecafoot, I don't know what it is this morning, that unveiled the jerseys that the Indomitable Lions are going to be donning for the competition. So what is new on that front?
Yeah, you remember for 3 weeks running, I've been indicating to you that as far as that thing is concerned, with respect to that issue of the jersey and what kind of attire the Lions will be having over there, the one of the casual wear had already been laid to rest, and now it also was over who would be providing the kits for the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon for the World Cup finals. This long-standing feud has been going on between the Coq Sportif in France and One All Sport, whose country of origin we are still to know. And at the end of the day, One All Sport has taken everything and made it a one-man show. So like I told you, I said we should wait for the official verdict from Fecafoot to know exactly how this thing unfolds and how it finally comes to an end. So while you're talking about the verdict that came in from a Nantes court in France, ordering Fecafoot to respect the contractual agreement with the Coq Sportif, it is true that was a decision that was taken in France, but also remember that when a decision is taken, there's also an allowance for appeals. And when that gets done, you can expect any other thing to happen. But in this case, no appeal had been taken. The Fecafoot, in an official statement published by the Secretary General of the Federation, said that they were going to appeal the decision from France, saying that that the judge did not master what was on the table and took a decision that, in their opinion, tended to favor the Coq Sportif. So that is where they are. But as you also indicated, as you speak, it's just been a few hours ago since Samuel Eto'o was in the nation's economic capital, Douala, where he formally unveiled the kit provider as one all sport and samples of the jerseys, and he himself buying for himself. So he went ahead and bought for himself, and then took the return trip back to the nation's capital, Yaounde, where just a stone's throw from where I'm sitting was supposed to have been effective already. Was supposed to have unveiled the same in the joint in Yaounde, where you would having the jersey being sold out to those who are interested in having them. So what happens year after can be any person's guess. Imagine a prospect people moving around hand in hand with their decision from the court in France, while Food is already uh, telling Cameroonians that we took a decision on this matter and that is final. So as it stands, what I think is going to happen is that Food is going to damn the consequences and proceed to having the Lions down the jerseys provided for by the one sportive, then let any other thing happen after the competition. So that's the state of affairs right now as we speak.
So, first of all, I'm wondering why the decision is coming from France. I mean, without getting into those all the political things. I mean, I know Le Coq Sportif is a French outfit, call it. So, I'm wondering why they had to sue Foot in France.
Yeah, well, I can't quite say that I am a student of law or at law, but I think that the little I know is that when you have to sue somebody in a thing like that, there are one of two venues that can be done. Either where that person resides or where the operation was undertaken. In this case, one would imagine that the operation was undertaken in France because Foot does not live in France. So definitely the operation would have been undertaken in France, and that is why they could easily just go behind the door and then sue to have what they call their rights. So I think that is the reason why they decided to do that way. So unless we're going to learn from some other sources, I think the reason is that that contract was finalized in France.
Okay, and so that debate is done. Everybody who wants to get a jersey, you can go to one all sports site, and then those in Cameroon, there are vendors, as you just mentioned, in Douala and Yaounde, that already have the outfits. Um, I'm sure you're going to try to get an outfit for us when the time comes. I don't know whether I'll
No,
have the courage to
I
wear
don't
that.
think Lambert, when I was the chief of service at sports at CRTV, I discourage anybody coming on my set with the jersey of the team taking part in the competition, because you have to observe some certain degree of objectivity when you do those things. And that's when you talk about how teams participate in competitions, you have to show some degree of neutrality as well. So I remember on one occasion, I think at the time, Mr. Amadou Vamuke and Professor Francis Waiting were managing CRTV. And on the eve of a crucial match involving the Lions, somebody of the commercial department came in and said that we had to put on the Lions jerseys to go on set. And I went upstairs and saw Deputy General Manager Professor Waiting, who himself took me to Mr. Vamuke's office. And then he said that this guy has come to lay a complaint and he finds it professionally sound. That he didn't think that it was right for us to go on the set and putting on the Lions jersey. And the response from Mr. Vamuke was that the situation he met, that was just like copying a good example. And behold, that evening, each and every other person who had to put on that jersey was asked to take it off. And so went on the set with our normal attires without anything showing that we're Cameroonians except for our names.
That's a great lesson to learn, but I think you have to patronize your own. Unfortunately, I don't know what your own is at this point, but some of us have dual nationalities that are not recognized anywhere else, but recognized by us. But let's get on. I think again, the jerseys that are to be worn, they are supposed to be worn by players, and finally, the list I don't know whether it's a complete list came out, and they're supposed to be the Cameroon national team is supposed to be prepping now for the World Cup. What is happening on that front?
No, what happened is that they would have loved to have most of the players that they think would qualify to take part in the tournament. Now, so what happened is that only those of them who play in the Qatari league, where the league was supposed to have been suspended or something like that, when available, would come over to join the players in camp. But since the camp had already been scheduled, the Rigobert Bahana put together 26 players from the domestic front, and they began training. But you have people like Abubakar Vincent, whose league is now uh, observing a break. I think there's Five Collins as well. There is goalkeeper Ipasi and 2 or 3 others who have joined that camp. But what I'm being told is that Rigobert Bahana did not want to let go of that opportunity to see if it was possible for him to include 2 local names on the list that is going to Qatar. So that is the reason why you find an entirely home-based assembly of players taking part in the tournament, or rather in the training sessions. And the training sessions are already on. And so Cameroon will be playing against Jamaica in Yaounde next Wednesday in what they describe as friendly match ahead of a test match in one hand, and a farewell match before they travel out of the country to go and continue camping ahead of the World Cup finals. So on Wednesday, people will not expect to see some kinds of faces that they will not have seen. But I think definitely he's going to include those of the main squad who are already in town and have been training with the team in that match. So whatever happens then, we'll be able to draw the conclusion of what is going to happen. And for now, while awaiting the 14th of November, which is supposed to be the final list day at FIFA, the day the various countries participating in the World Cup finals are supposed to forward their lists, who then know who is on board and who is not part of the party. Already there's been a lot of talk around town suggesting that invitations had been sent to certain players, although unorthodoxly. We don't yet know exactly who are those players. But, well, you could have some names like Oyongo Bitolo, a name like I think it is Duplex, something like that. And those are names that as soon as they were made available on social media, raised quite some eyebrows in Cameroon. People were asking the question, what is this issue? What are these names that are coming for you? And it gives allowance for people to make all kinds of suggestions, all kinds of analysis of the situation. So we just have to hold our breath like we did for this kid manufacturer puzzle until today came. So we have to wait for the 14th before Rigobert Bahana tells us who are the players who are going to be taking part in the World Cup campaign. But I imagine that after that day, he'll be able to know which 2 players in the domestic league will be going to Qatar for the World Cup.
Yeah, I think some time ago when we were talking about this, you had indicated that Cameroon is one of the few countries in the world that has 8 million coaches. So everybody has a selection to make. But I think part of the controversy this week, if I'm not wrong, or maybe last week, was whether a certain Basogok was included in the team. And it seems as if everybody is coming up to speed with wanting to participate. But there are also rumors that players always buy their way into the team by paying some money to the coach. I don't know how true that is. What is your experience with that reality? And it's not just about Cameroon, because the Ghanaian team has a similar experience. There are players that have just been included, and we'll talk about Ghana shortly. And some people were saying that these people are in the team currently because they paid their way. So what is this corruption, bribery and corruption in soccer?
Well, it's not only in football. Bribery and corruption is not only in many other aspects of life or human endeavors, as a matter of fact. But let me say, to begin with what you talked about the teams, effectively, Christian Basogok is amongst some of those players who've been told to receive an invitation already. But I don't think that people should rush to the conclusion that he would have bought his way into the team. Try to look at what is happening right now with Christian Baksogov. The latest we got from him is that he seems to be playing one of his best moments of football in the Chinese league. So that is what seems to happen, and that is what is happening with so many other Cameroonians. Like last week, we were talking about this possible that could end up being a headache for Rigobert Song Bahanda when all of a sudden and out of the blues, almost every other person starts playing very well, every other person starts scoring the goals. So what I've always said, Lambert, is very simple, that if there is any coach worth the salt, he will always want to have the best results. And the only way you can have the best result is to field the best players. And the only way to field the best players is when you get convinced that this or that player is good. So you can't, I don't expect him to be inviting players to come to camp if they have nothing to offer. So maybe it is because of the latest metamorphosis in the play style, the attitudes of the players in the various leagues that has made it possible for them to bring out some people that who might have been calling fossils that have been rejuvenated and have been brought back to life. So that's what is happening. Now, in line with that, you just asked the question of what is my experience in this whole thing about buying one's place in the match, in the team. You know, not long ago, a young man met me in town and said the father wanted to see me. I said, your father wants to see me. Where is he? He is at home. And he wants to see me, calling me for his home when I don't know him. Tell him that he should come and see me. So when the father finally took an appointment and got to seeing me, and the question was simple: what do I need to do for my son to play in the national team of Cameroon? I said, you know something? First thing I want to tell you is that, excuse me, no sports journalist can take your son into the national team. Know that very well. And that's secondly, you don't have to come and say you want to buy the place for your son into the team. There are things that I imagine should be happening. That maybe if a coach wants to put together 20 players for a team, and then he has 18 already setting at some 2 places for grabs, that their son should be able to play and convince him, so that any stipend or any envelope that accompanies his being introduced to the team be backed by the fact that the son of yours can play. So I don't think I could start advising you right now to go around envelopes and that telling me that you want to buy away for your son in the national team. In 1996, during the Africa Cup of Nations in South Africa, a player who is today one of the coaches of the national teams of Cameroon met myself and George Fontamo along the lobby of the hotel and told us that the coach was asking for money from players to be fielded. And I said, is that right? He said, yes. I said, okay. The only way we can stop that, we can ambush and crush that kind of an attitude in the den, is if you yourself, who seems to be a victim, can give us that soundbite on the microphone. He desisted. And I said, okay, that can only be taken as rumors. So that is it. So I wouldn't really say that I've had when you see people, but we've been told that some players find their way to the national team because they're giving envelopes to coaches.
Yeah, so again, it's a human endeavor, isn't it? So there are many things that are to be expected, especially, I mean, there are people, even though it says nobody has his place in the team guaranteed, there are people who will know that if they don't go to this World Cup, then something is wrong. But again, the old Charles, welcome. Charles is coming back to the question of the goalkeepers. Fabrice should be given a chance also in the squad to Qatar.
And let me say, what Charles is saying there, Lambert, is one of the things I've just told you. Suddenly, he has become a very performing goalkeeper. And as we speak, this past few days, he was given the prize of the best player in that league for this season. So you have those kinds of things coming up, and I think it's really going to be a terrible jigsaw puzzle for the technical staff of the national team. But it's left to them. They have to make the best out of all what is available. You see that? So if Ondwa is being hailed as a good goalkeeper, he's also one of those reported to have received an invitation to come to the team. So things like that, I just imagine that Rigobert Song is surely going to have a very, very rough moment trying to put together the team that is taken to the World Cup.
but I mean, we talked about this before. So I think some programs down. The goalkeeping position in Cameroon has always been controversial. I mean, we have always had this whether it's Bell versus Nkono, you have Alium Boka and Song. It has always been there. I don't know why the hype. What is it about the goalkeeping position? I mean, even if you look at the is it Onana? It's excellent, isn't it? Andre Onana is doing so well. So I don't know how they are supposed to take three goalkeepers, and there's one whose name the coach could not even pronounce the last time. But we are hoping that let the best let the best team be. I mean, the best goalkeepers be taken for the competition. But
What
again,
I am for Fabrice Ondoa's summoning the team to the camp before the competition, because it's going to heighten the competition between in the goalkeeping department. Where apparently Andre Onana is already the main goalkeeper, and then if Fabrice Ondoa will define his way in the turn, it's going to heighten the competition between the two, and just the best or the better of the two will emerge. Because I don't foresee that any of the other goalkeepers, a Fassi and the one whose name we find it difficult to pronounce, just like myself, I don't see any of them being selected in the place of Adorno as the first choice keeper. So the presence of Fabrice Ondoa is going to make it possible for us to be united on one stand. Who is the best goalkeeper to stand in between the stakes for the Cameroon national team? So I think that the more they perform well, the better for the coaches. But just that they can constitute an Achilles heel when it comes to him having to choose who should be the one to spot the main jersey.
so welcome, Raymond. Hi, Raymond. How are you?
Yes, hi Lambert, hi Fon.
Great.
Welcome, and you came in just at the right time because we're looking at the who should be taken to the national team for the World Cup, the Cameroon national team, and there the question was about the goalkeeper. Somebody just indicated on the Fabrice, and I know you had mentioned before. I mean, we talked about it. I think 3-4 weeks back. And you seem to have been one of those who is so much in favor of this. I mean, I would want the other guy who is in Spain, what's his name, the older goalkeeper, to also come in so that you have enough competition. But Raymond, what's your take about the Lions, their preparations, and what are you looking at in terms of those who to be called up?
Well, World Cups normally players have a minimum of 40 matches in their legs before they get to a summer World Cup. But given that we are in a winter World Cup, at least I will expect every player coming into the World Cup to have at least a minimum of 15 full matches, because this is going to be a World Cup in which I've talked to most fitness trainers, and normally the month of November, December is when you hit your stride in terms of fitness issues. And countries like Germany, where they always have a break in between, it is always in November and December that you have players giving their all, knowing that they were going to go for a break. So getting into the World Cup, I'll expect that we have players who are fit, who can certainly do the job, and maybe not players who would have spent most of the time on the bench and hoping that they have a certain standing with the national team for them to be able to get a place with the team. I mean, in my view, or in my mind, I still think that this is going to be a very, very competitive. Countries are going to regroup like maybe for a week before playing the World Cup. So I'll expect teams to hit their stride maybe by the third World Cup group game, when many things would have been put in place. But now, coming back to Cameroon, it's true that I talked about it the last time, that we should desist from the goalkeeper issue. It's not a question of giving in a certain goalkeeper pressure or giving him. I mean, take the Spanish national team, for example. The first goalkeeper for the national team is Unai Simon. Unai Simon plays for Athletic Bilbao, for crying out loud. David De Gea was not even in the preliminary list. Kepa was in the preliminary list, but we are not even sure if he will get selected. It's like that for most of the other teams. Going forward, I think going forward, we should put this matter to rest. The top choice goalkeeper for Cameroon is Andre Onana, and it is that, both in terms of quality, both in terms of talent, Onana is the top dog. Now, if you want to add other goalkeepers to Andre Onana, fine and good. But I don't think bringing in polemics, that is bringing in Ondua, because Ondua is the cousin to Andre Onana, bringing in that polemics is something that we need. I don't think we need that. Ondua had his time in 2017, fine and good. But I think we have to move on in life. And some people are telling me, especially Fon, who is smiling, that than to get an Epasi who plays in Greece, or to get a Simon who is second choice goalkeeper for Marseille, or to get Omosola who plays for AS Vita, why not bringing in Fabrice Ondua? Football doesn't work that way. Football works with dynamics. And the dynamics is that if Ondua gets into the team, knowing that he has people he has played in that team with in 2017, it's going to be a different environment. And that's not the environment that we want. I think, I've asked people the question. November of last year, we beat Côte d'Ivoire 1-0. This year, when we hosted the AFCON, remember the match against Egypt? We took Egypt all the way till the penalty shootout. Ondua was in the goalpost. Remember the third, Onana. Remember the third place game. Onana was in the goalpost. Remember the match against Algeria over there in Blida. Onana was in the goalpost. Now, taking all the players, I've said Cameroonians should choose in the play they had in these 4 crunch matches. If all those players are present in our 3 matches, be it against Switzerland, be it against Serbia, and be it against Brazil, and we don't qualify for the second round, are we going to be honest enough to say that we did our best? I think going to Qatar, we should go in with a team that is going to do its best, and we should go in with a team that we know is going to represent Cameroon honorably.
Well,
Yes.
let me ask Raymond this question. Although I started by saying that what he said a while ago is tending to quote what I was supposed to have said is not true. I never said anything like that. My argument has always been very simple. Take the best at any given time. And the question therefore I was going to ask Raymond is, what if Fabrice Ondua was called up for the camp, and during the camp he proved to be better than Onana? Whom would you want to be fielded for the World Cup as the first choice keeper?
Well, only the goalkeeping coach and the coach will have to get that decision. It means that we will not be privy to that decision. But imagine that Ondua gets to that camp, and the first match against Switzerland, we see Ondua. It's going to be, because that is what happened in 2010. In 2010, we knew that the short starter was Alexander Song. We were shocked over here to see that our first match against Japan, Alexander Song was on the bench. And these are the kind of things that we don't want to happen again. In 2014, we had the same issue. We played a wonderful match against Germany, 2-2 draw, and we went for the first game. I've taken on my TV, I've been able to watch some of these old World Cup matches against Mexico. First game for Cameroon in the 2014 World Cup. We were pedestrian in the first 45 minutes. Now, you ask yourself the question, how could a team which was very, very much against Germany play that bad in the first 45 minutes against Mexico? Simply because we had team politics which came into play. That's why I'm saying that there are 2 contentious positions in the national team. We have the goalkeeping position, in which there are still people out there clamoring for Ondua, and we have the midfield position, in which there are some people who think that Zambo Anguissa out of the team is a very bad proposition. But the question is that we qualified for the World Cup without Zambo Anguissa. We were being led by Burkina Faso in the 3rd place match at the AFCON, 3-0. Zambo Anguissa was on the bench. Zambo Anguissa didn't even play the 120 minutes. He was on the bench the whole time. were able to equalize the 3 goals and beat Burkina Faso on penalties. So why should we bring polemics into an issue where, in my view, they're not supposed to be polemics?
Lambert, I don't subscribe to what Raymond has just said. I still maintain it that when you're going to the World Cup, you take the best player at the given time when you're going to the World Cup. Otherwise, I would want to queue up behind those who asked Raymond a simple question. Who was the goalkeeper in 2017 when Cameroon won the Africa Cup of Nations? And who was the goalkeeper in 2021 when Cameroon played the way they did? Or in 2022 when Cameroon played the way they did? So we are not going to go back to saying that he is playing well. He's so wonderful when he plays the UEFA Champions League. But that as we start looking at the World Cup, we should therefore forget about any such thing as the possibility of him being replaced. What we are simply saying is that Cameroon has to, like every other country going for the World Cup, to summon all the players who have anything to offer in terms of playing the game of football. And then at the end of the day, come out with the best team that can represent the country. That is it. And that is why at some point I said, well, what Samuel Eto'o said at some point that nobody had earned a place as yet in that team was the best thing you'd have said. Let them play and prove on the field, that they can play and viably represent Cameroon at the World Cup. Don't forget that in 2017, rather in 2015, during the African Nations Cup, I was there as an envoy from CRTV, and they kept on asking the question, why is Jay Clinton not being fielded? Why is Jay Clinton not being fielded? And my argument is very simple, that if the coach was what they thought and thought that Jay Clinton had something to offer the team, to contribute to the team's success story, then he could have been fielded. Then if he wasn't going to be that, then he should be put on the bench. And effectively, I went to one of the training sessions and I saw what was happening. He wouldn't want to take instructions from the coach. And no coach what they saw will field any player who's indisciplined. That's the long and short of the whole thing. So as far as I'm concerned, we are not going there just because of a name, or you don't feel Tupu Ekame because he gave us a stroke of redemption in leader. They feel him because during the camp, he proved that he's the person best suited for this particular position in the field. That's how I look at it.
Well, the only way I'm going to end this is by saying chacun sa chance. So
that is what they call Pontius Pilatus and Mr. Lambert.
But
like saying in pidgin. It's like saying in pidgin. Now when I know.
We continue to wait for the team. I'm really disappointed with the Lions because I want to compare that, and let's move over to Ghana. So the first team that put out the, let's say, prize money for their players was Germany. The German national team indicated how much their players who were going to participate at the World Cup were going to receive. Ghana, the Minister of Youth and Sports, had to take a budget. The budget for the Ghanaian national team, the Black Stars, is $8.1 million. He has to take that to the parliament to defend that. I remember that Ghana is going through some real crisis at this moment, economic, because they're trying to get, call it a bailout from the IMF. And so it's kind of difficult within this kind of context. But I found it very interesting that the Minister of Youth and Sports has to go in front of the parliament to defend the budget. And he's telling the people, he's telling the parliamentarians where the money is going to come from. If they go beyond this stage, I think FIFA has they said at the beginning of the competition, when they qualified, FIFA sent them 1.5 million. And that is what they have used to prepare the test matches and all that. And each team that is coming in, I think they are having an additional, I think it's 13 million, if I'm not mistaken, 13 or 8 million, something like that. But he explained all that. Each player is going to get $10,000 per day throughout the competition. Do we have something like that in Cameroon? Or?
No, we don't have. Just this morning, I was listening to a representative of the Ministry for Sports and Physical Education. He was asked the question, what is the World Cup budget for Cameroon? And he said, the World Cup budget for Cameroon is 4.3 billion francs. Now, question number 2, how much will the players earn for participating in the tournament, and what is being previewed as the sums that will be paid in the event of a victory? And he said it is not in my position or not in my place to start telling all those things right now. But the time is coming when we'll be told that. And at some point, he said, it will just be virtually the same kind of thing like in Brazil. And if we go by that, it would mean that for the first round of the tournament, each player will have about 34 million CFA francs. That's what he seems to be saying. But now they're holding back the figures. They're not telling us anything. But I know that when Samuel Eto'o, the president of FECAFOOT, made Cameroon believe that it was possible for the Lions to win the World Cup in Qatar, he at the same time was looking for 14.1 billion francs to take to the World Cup. Now, we are told that some very good, well-meaning Cameroonians actually went to the State House and saw the chief himself and told him that in this tournament like this, FIFA gives this amount of money. When you get to this stage, FIFA gives you to prepare this amount of money and so on and so forth. And the guy said if that's what it is, then why would they be asking for 14.1 billion francs to take the World Cup? So at the end of the day, the official ministry was confirming today that they're being given 4.3 billion francs to take to the World Cup. So that is it.
That is one hell of 4.1 billion francs CFA.
Yeah.
Wow. And every player is
4.3
billion. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's Cameroon. We're just saying, but let's get over to the Black Stars. I don't know if the thing that the coach, I think, put out that list of 55 players, and it's kind of interesting that they are already, I mean, you have the locals in there too, but you have a squad like that, 55 players ahead of the World Cup. Ghanaians are also complaining that that is not enough, isn't it? And he has about, I think, 14 defenders in that list. What is your assessment about the Black Stars? Are they? Do you think, because based on what one of the former coaches of the Indomitable Lions said this week, Cameroon is not going to go anywhere. The only two teams that they are looking forward to are Senegal and Morocco, and we talked about that last week. But what is your assessment of the Ghanaian team?
Now, I have not read through the Ghanaian list, but I can make a comment about that. I don't think that they have done anything new. If you move from the premise that the national team of Cameroon is usually composed of professionals, and that when there's someone to come, there are about 30 of them, then you would have been concluding, therefore, that you would have summoned the same 30 players who are playing abroad, plus the 26 who are already here, and that would have made 56. So it's virtually the same thing. So it's not, Ghana has not done anything different from that. But what is interesting with Ghana is that they say they have set a target for the World Cup, and that target is to reach the semi-finals of the World Cup. That's a target, to reach the semi-finals of the World Cup, at least. That's what they're saying. Now, how do they get to reaching the semi-finals of the World Cup? You must put together the human resources in terms of the players who can take the Black Stars to that level of competition. And how do you do it? You are summoning everybody who has anything to offer in terms of participation and making the Black Stars the real team that we want to see at the World Cup. So I think Coach Ado, he doesn't want a kind of situation where, should they fail to reach that, to realize that dream, that people start pointing at him. Why did you leave this player of this club back home? Why did you leave this other player back home? Why did you leave this and that, and so on and so forth? So based on, I imagine, on the performance of the players at this particular point in time, I think that is why he is putting together a list of 56, or rather 55. But whatever happened, they could have been 100. What we are interested in now is, what is the nomenclature of that team when the deadline for sending the list to FIFA strikes on the 14th of November? That's what everyone is looking at. As far as I'm concerned, when you look at Cameroon team saying that there are 26 home-based players who are called to come, as far as I'm concerned, well, that is no news. He wants to look for, I'm being told, 2 names that will join the main team. Because it could be the same kind of argument that the coach of the Ghanaian coach is having where he is right now. But I think that there comes a time when you are building a team together, you have to look for everybody who has something to offer. Every other player what they sold. And then when the time comes, you now trim it down and say, okay, these are the best of what we'll be able to collect from the whole assembly of 55 players. So I don't think that is doing anything any different. What I like very much about them is they have set a target. We are reaching at least the semi-finals of the tournament. And if we are reaching the semi-finals of the tournament, then we're going to look for the players who can take us to that level. And then you now, the government, make sure that the finance perform our preparations and our stay and performance during the tournament.
So that is good to set a target, but realistically, is the Ghanaian team up to the task? Do you, from their recent performances, at least they have a few good players, playing in the English Premier League. But what is your assessment of the Ghanaian team?
I've been told that figures speak volumes. So they went to this brief FIFA window we had just recently, and they got the results that they got. They were so shaky that the first team that was being cited as the first to leave the tournament will be Ghana, right? But I think what is happening is that they are going to a competition called the World Cup. And what are theorists saying? Theorists are trying to look at the history, the record books of the Ghanaian team at the World Cup finals. They remember that Ghana was the very first team that would have emerged as the first African team to reach the semi-finals of the tournament. Had the penalty that was awarded against Uruguay. Yes, Asamoah Gyan did not fire off target, right? So they knew that come within. They were virtually seeing the semi-final. If the semi-finals were an object, so were they virtually seeing the object not far from them. But they missed it. So what they are saying is, it is no longer talking about Ghana playing the first round of the tournament. It's Ghana going through the first round, going through the round of 16, and then proceeding to the round of 8. And then going past it. That's what they're looking at. And I find it realistic in terms of comparing it with the statistics and the history that they're writing about themselves and the World Cup competitions. So I don't think that, for example, a country like Cameroon, if you were ever to go to any World Cup finals and you don't reach the quarterfinals of the tournament, then you have done nothing. So they too should be eyeing a semi-final place. Well, I know they have pushed their target well beyond the semi-finals and put it up not only the final, but winning the cup. So setting a target bet. So in terms of history, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of history, Ghana should not be thrown stones at for dreaming that they are going to reach the semi-finals of the tournament, in spite of the recent results that they had during the FIFA window. They must aspire. If they aspire, they can achieve. Remember very well, Lambert, that if you were, for example, going in for a competitive entrance examination, if your friends registered for that examination and you didn't register, then the day they already have the results, you should not even listen to them, because you will not even be amongst those who failed. And the reason is because you never took part in that. So when you set a target, that helps you now to prepare on, take your ambition and your capabilities and put them, marriage them together and see how you get to that.
So the team that everybody's dreaming of, the Senegalese team, any news on that front? I know their magic boy Mane is doing magic in the Bundesliga, but how are we sizing them up?
Well, the only news I have for the Senegalese side is that their player, I think it's Bouna Sarr, has been excluded from the World Cup finals because he's been giving some time off to teach for discipline, because he did not comply with the exigencies of the anti-doping commission of FIFA. They had international in its international club side. So by not living true to the billing as would have been expected, the players who are being examined, whether or not they have abused the rules by taking drugs and stuff like that, is being sanctioned. Bouna Sarr, and the coach of the Senegalese side is saying that the fact that I won't be having Bouna Sarr is really going to be a serious handicap to me, because when you have a team, you know what you have. It is true. I said something last week which was misconstrued. What we are saying is that when you have the backbone of the team, you don't touch it. But you have those ancillary parts of the team that make it become the whole. It's very important that you make sure that you have the rightful teams the rightful names or powers or players who can come in to kind of complement the efforts of the backbone. So the coach is saying that this man is a key member of the backbone of my team. The fact that he's not going to be there is going to be a headache for me. But I'm telling you already, Lambert, like we said before, that if you have to be consulting the notebooks to predict what can happen, Senegal, it is true that they have the most manageable group in amongst the 5 African teams going to the World Cup. But they share knowledge that they won the African Nations Cup and that they have a player who is gunning for the first position on earth as the best player. They know every other opponent they're going to tackle is going to be doing so with a lot of keenness. They're going to be very diligent inside the play. So the Senegalese side, as far as I'm concerned, well, it could be a coin and the back of the coin at the same time. So we just have to wait and see what happens. But I think from the 14th of November, we shall start having an idea and really making really serious predictions of what can easily happen as far as the African team's participation will be concerned.
Good. So let's leave it at that for the World Cup. We have the other two teams. We'll look at Morocco and Tunisia next week. But let's go back to where we ought to have started. Yes.
Lambert, before you proceed, we were talking about the World Cup. There was a detail that I didn't give you, and it has to do with the Cameroon team and their outfit for the World Cup. I didn't give you was that because everybody everywhere wants to don that jersey, right? So I guess you would have been asking me, what would it cost for us to have a jersey of the one all sports? And the prices have been put at 39,900 francs. That is 40,000 CFA francs. And your own money over there, it's something like $80.
Wow, just to get one. So all three sets.
Yeah.
And I realized that they retired the yellow completely because they didn't have any of the yellow piece. So again,
Lambert, you know, I don't know. This whole thing is crazy. Huh? The Lions won the first African Cup of Nations in the yellow jersey. The Lions won the first edition of the Afro-Asia Cup with the yellow jersey. So what's the business with yellow?
Well, let's see how that goes. Okay. So last week we were looking forward to the Ballon d'Or for Cameroon, and we talked a lot about the award ceremony. So how did that go and who did what?
Wow, Lambert, that was a come and see. Really, Fekafu should be given a pat on the back for that. It was such a sumptuous ceremony, right? You had some government ministers who attended the event at the Palais de Congrès, the conference center in Yaounde. Of course, Samuel Eto'o, the president of the Cameroon Football Federation, was there, and a host of almost every living former Ballon d'Or player was present and in the hall. We also had people from all walks of life, various stratas of the society, those in music, in cinema, and what have you. They were all present at the Palais de Congrès. That was in terms of what happened, what we saw, what made the eyes there at Palais de Congrès. I didn't go to Palais de Congrès or the conference center. I watched from my house and I watched everything on television. And you see, when it happens, it made us think. It made people draw the conclusion that sometimes change is necessary, right? Sometimes change is necessary. It took a change, a major change at Fekafu for an initiative that had been long buried 30 years ago to be given a new lease of life. And what happened? It just made me say that, well, why does CAF not think that they can equally come and have that kind of a ceremony here in Cameroon? It was such a wonderful ceremony. Now, talking about the recipients, well, you know, you asked me the question, whom I thought would emerge, would prevail at the end of the day. And I told you that I have not been following the national championship for a while now, but that what I predicted was that there was somebody whose name had taken the airwaves hostage. That was Maru Swaibu of Kotospor Garwa. He prevailed at the end of the day. He was the one who emerged as the most valuable player. And you know what? Once his name was read out and he came up to correct his price, what did he say? The young man dressed in the bubu, this gown from northern parts of Cameroon, excuse me, which also tells us that you can attend those kinds of things not only in the white man's suit, you can also come the traditional. He went there, soft-spoken, but said something that was so eloquent. At the stake of, he said, Monsieur le Président, on était dans le noir. That Mr. President, Cameroon football has been in the dark. And with the holding of this particular ceremony, it like God has said, let there be light, and there is light in Cameroon football. So it was such a wonderful thing. So he prevailed, and everybody said, and that is why shortly after that, what happened was that there was a general outcry that this guy cannot be the player he is, dominating the domestic scene without being called up for the national team. And as we speak, he's amongst the 26 players who have been called up to camp ahead of us Wednesday's match with Jamaica. That is not all. The effect that ceremony had was such that the next day I was still watching on television, and you know this famous musician called Njore. Njore was invited as a guest on Equinox television in Esther Maes, a program that comes up every Sunday afternoon. And what did this guy say? That alone said it all. He like turned and looked at the camera and was like talking to the president of Cameroon, Paul Biya. And what he said, Monsieur le Président, dans le prochain gouvernement, il faut nommer Eto'o-Fils ministre de la Culture pour un an seulement. What is he saying? That Eto'o-Fils is doing things so well to the point where they of culture are asking and craving that the president of the republic should appoint Eto'o-Fils as the minister of culture just for 1 year to put order in their family, and then they can be taken back to what he calls position de prédilection, which is fika food. So that alone summarizes everything that happened last weekend in Yaounde. The resurrection of the Ballon d'Or Awards and how the ceremony itself went on, presented by Patrick Mboma and a junior colleague at CRTV, that is Eleanor Besson. And you know what? I chatted with Mboma before the event, and we spoke. Then after the event, I chatted with him again. I said, Mr. Patrick Mboma, you brought nostalgia to the fore. When you kept on joking with Samuel Eto'o, asking all kinds of questions, the way you people used to behave when you were still sporting the colors of the national team was so wonderful. And you made, I would not be surprised had so many people shed tears of nostalgia and or what you can call. So, in a word, it was wonderful.
Yeah. At least it's great to hear that in spite of everything, there is some wonderful thing that can come out from Cameroon, and it beats one's imagination. Why such a simple, such a small thing? I mean, small in terms of, I don't think it takes that much to organize that kind of thing. Feka food, 30 years. It's shameful. It's a shameful thing, and we have not been able to decipher the whys and the wherefores of this, why it didn't happen. But again, bright lights, and let's hope that I'm sorry for Njora because he's thinking that Eto'o-Fils is looking for Minister of Culture. His eyes are on something bigger, and let's pray and see what happens. So
you know what? Let me tell you something. I was chatting with somebody who is an insider at Pika Food, who is telling me how Eto'o-Fils goes about his things there. And I told him that Eto'o-Fils spirit is the very spirit I have, and the spirit I had when I was at CRTV. I want things to be done, and not only done well, and only done well, but done well ahead of time. That's what I believe in, right? But I told him that the only difference between us is that while I might just be a poor man, he has money in his pocket, which means that what? Which means that he thinks, conceives ideas, and comes up with them and say, you have to implement these ideas. Now, if he has to rely on the powers that be for the support to do that, it will take all the time in the world. So he might go ahead sometimes to pre-sponsor some of those things and maybe recover his money later on. You see that? You could have the great ideas, but you must also have the tools and implements to be able to transform the things that you're saying from the basis of ascriptions to those of achievements. So, and I think that, like you were just saying that it's unfortunately for Njore, that is it cannot be that way. Well, it can be that way, but it is for not so much in haste.
So just along those lines, I was trying to pick up a question that somebody had last week, which was more political about Eto'o, and even though it's something we had addressed, Fonganjo, I'm sure you should know him, is one of the funds from the Northwest that is now here in the US. Mm-hmm. But he was asking your opinion about the fact that Eto'o is not appointing Anglophones to Fekafut and what you thought about that. But we don't do politics on this show. So, but if you want to...
you know what? No. Lambert, if there's any question that has to do with sports, the question can be asked. It might have some political undertones, but you don't know how much of sports is politics and how much of politics is sports. Well, the question still rages on. That I think a question like that should be asked Eto'o, but I don't want to show any bias. I don't subscribe to the issue of saying that you must have Anglophones in this, you must have Anglophones in that. No, what I am for is there should be performance. People should be performing. Now, I am not saying that they're not being appointed because they're not performing. That's not what I'm saying. That's why I say that he should be asked that question so that he tells people exactly why it is that way. It could just be a happening like that, but there must be a reason why it is coming out the way it is coming, right? So I think that's all I can say about it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it, but that's a conversation for another day. I'm sure it will be nice to have a tour to talk about the appointments that he's been making and the rounds that he's quite popular now in Cameroon. But let's stay on sports. Nothing for the women today. Let's not be, so that they don't
Well,
come.
when that was organized, the Ballon d'Or was organized by Foot. There is what you have in Cameroon, the Commission for Feminine Football, Women's Football. The days following that event, they too, they came under a bright spotlight and organized their own show. Now, I didn't have the opportunity to watch that. But what I've read on social media is saying that it was a question of copying a good example that was set by Foot. So they came up with theirs, and the various laureates were announced, and they got their various prizes. So some of them, for example, like the best goalkeeper during the night of the Ballon d'Or, who was Anem Gondon, prevailed as the best goalkeeper in the Super League, in the Guinness Super League. Of course, they call it Guinness. They now call the Women's Elite One Football League as the Guinness Super League for sponsorship purposes. And the new name that's been given to it, they didn't just call it ladies, we call it the Super League, and it is sponsored by Guinness. So they had their own event as well. And it was still like that. Like, what do you say? Why would you not copy a good example? That's the question that's being asked. And so effectively, that's exactly what they did. And they captured headlines here. So women's football too can also be spelled like a proper noun.
Right, and also CAF, I think their competitions are on this weekend for the women's categories. I think the women's championship, I think we talked about it last week. But the remainder of the time that we have, let's get into a Czech's diary, the most fun part of this show. What do you have up your sleeves today?
Well, you know what? Sometimes when they ask this question, I feel a little embarrassed. I would want you to ask a question that is more specific. But the only thing I can say concerning a Czech's diary for now is this. The first one is that this very day, 33 years ago, that was on the 5th of November, 1989, was played in Yaounde, the second leg match of the second leg semifinals of the African Champions Club Cup competition that was scored at the time between Tonnerre of Yaounde and Raja of Casablanca. The match ended on a 2-2 draw, but Raja had won the first leg match 2-0, so Tonnerre were eliminated. So that is just what I can give you as a piece of story for that concerning this day. In fact, I found it was significant to go back to that particular match day. And to also remind you that when you go through the Czechs diary, we're going to discover that the month of November had so many things happening. I wouldn't be giving those things right away. But let me say, I went back to look at some of the things that they included in that, because sometimes when I read those things, I didn't tell the viewers out there that for me to be able to come up with a Czechs diary, I went back and looked at my book of daily facts and figures from when I became a student in the School of Mass Communication. So on a daily basis, I kept on noting down things here and there, so on and so forth. Those things that I noted down, plus the reports that I wrote during my tenure at CRTV as a sports reporter, constitute therefore what they call the Czechs diary. And sometimes when I go through some of them, I step back and say, wow, this is really so this 2 days ago, I had something on that was talking about the Hall of Fame. That was in the year 2009. I told you some time ago as well that when I started doing the countdown to the publication of the Czechs diary, or the launch of the Czechs diary, I started giving some excerpts from year in, year out as I wrote the book. I began in 1984, but now I've gone 85, 86, right up to yesterday was 2009. And in 2009, I was talking about the Hall of Fame. Now, the president of the Cameroon National Olympic and Sports Committee, Colonel Kakaba Maboum, had the bright idea of rewarding Cameroonians who have flown the country's colors quite high in international sporting roundabouts. And so they came up with what they call the Hall of Fame. So they were being celebrated from football to athletics and so on and so forth. The Theophilus Abegas, the Francois Bangos, Roger Miller, and so on and so forth. So somewhere there was a small column there that was dedicated to journalists. Now, in the hall on that occasion were names like Zakarenko, Abel Bengo, Peter Resoka. Remember those stalwarts in Cameroon sports journalism years gone back. So I was also in the hall, and I want to tell you that I have the toughest CV and international coverage. Nobody in this country, no sports journalist has covered 5 World Cups and 12 Africa Cups of Nations. I have done so. And even at the time, since the records were being built over the years, at the time I still had the best. So therefore, I would have expected that in the Hall of Fame, my name should have featured amongst the very first names on the list. But I was found somewhere in the crowd. And the question that I asked myself, was it because I was Anglophone or what? That was the question I asked. That they didn't know so much about me or what, that kind of thing. So I asked that question, then an answer was not given to it. But that's beside the point. But what I came back to was that in that hall, while Zakarenko was giving his award, I took the floor. I went and negotiated with the MC of the occasion, Alain Bilibi, who allowed me to take the floor. And when I took the floor, I told him that you all know me as a sports reporter at CRTV.
Okay, so I think Fon has been denied the opportunity to get into the Hall of Fame. I could see that it's getting dark in Cameroon, and I can bet my last dollar that the problem is Enio must have cut that off, so that may be a problem. So, well, here he comes back. So,
suddenly happens. I don't know what suddenly happens. So I said therefore that I was a student in Casbah where I read the sciences, but I became a sports reporter because of a report that Zakarenko gave from Spain, a pre-match report between Cameroon and Poland. So I now reproduce the report you already know about. And when I came to the end of the report, I tend to look at Zakarenko. Now, I walked towards him. I discovered that tears were welling up in his eyes. I thought that was a very touching moment for him. He remembered that particular thing. And I've described that in the Czech's diary. So that's one of the things that I wrote about in the year 2009, titled or headlined the Hall of Fame.
So because you know that every time you mention that particular call it your particular lines of Zakarenko, one needs to plead with you that again, for the sake of those who might be joining us for the first time, or those who are just coming in and do not know that Zakarenko was the one who really mentored you and brought you into sports or soccer. Do you mind giving us that line again, just so that we close on that high note?
Well, at your service, Lambert. So at the 3 p.m. newscast, and I will go to sports. In sports tonight, Cameroon is taking on Poland in a few hours from now, in what the veteran sportscaster Zakarenko is being described as a decisive and important encounter. For a pre-match report, let us go over to Zakarenko in Spain. Good afternoon. As you rightly put it, we are 3 hours away from what has been described as a decisive and important encounter. Decisive because a win for either team today will give them a right to leadership in the Four Nations Group 1, following yesterday's 1-1 tie between Italy and Peru. Decisive also because of Cameroon to make the goals this afternoon, the players must be in superlative form. Offer no scoring opportunities to the Spurs, who have a remarkable flair to capitalize on defense error. And of course, adopt and sustain a very aggressive attacking power and spirit for full 90 minutes. Poland, 4 times World Cup finalists, who want to beat Cameroon, their second all-black World Cup opponents, as they did against Haiti in West Germany 8 years ago. But the question is, where do we draw the line between Cameroon and Haiti and between the years 1974 and 1982? Before this afternoon's talk of war, this is how Frenchman Jean Vexam is put up our national football team. Goalkeeper and captain Thomas Nkono. Defenders from left to right, Kaham Michel, Onana Elundu Eli, Njaya Rene and Bom Ephraim. Halfback Kunde Emmanuel, Abega Theophile, Dida Arantes and Audu Ibrahim. Center forward Roger Miller and Geya Jacques. Before the 4:15 p.m. clash, and before this answer the question of whether or not Cameroon will make Omar, the British television sports journalist Jerry Harrison says, and I quote from the records, the match between Cameroon and Poland will be tough and tight. Zakarenko is playing for Radio Cameroon.
And that's Fon Echekiye reporting on behalf of Zakarinku. But Fon, really, I want to thank you very much. Thank you. And again, we have not had the opportunity to talk this week, but we have a very robust program. I told you I'm trying to do everything to make sure that that program goes through. We want to be able to do all 15. You mentioned 10, but we should be able to do all 15 matches. Each of the 5 African teams will have 3 games. So we should be able to do all 15. We are trying at this time to make sure that we put our resources together. It's quite an expensive project. So if people know people who want to sponsor such ventures, please reach out. But the promise we make is going to be the World Cup is going to be live with us on the Lambom Show. Analysis, commentaries, and all that, whatever you want. Some very unique aspect to the forthcoming World Cup you will get on the Lambom Show. So we want to make that commitment. But please, if you can support us in any way to make that happen, do not hesitate. Any last words, Fon?
Just that I'm just thinking what you've just said and indicating that the main dish and all of what you have said is going to be a program, a 13-minute program that we're going to call Sport Vision. And that is going to take you back to the days of the program you used to know, conceived at CRTV by Bo Herbert in 1987 and sustained all through over almost 3 decades by a humble servant here from Echekiye.
So thank you. So 13 minutes, but real deep dive. I'm going to meet Bo Herbert tomorrow, and I'm going to challenge him to be part of it for the first edition. But thank you. Thanks for spending the afternoon, your evening with us. First Saturday in November is going to be a very busy November. You don't want to miss the Lambom Show on any Saturday or any day we are coming on. Thanks for always being with us. Get people to sign up on our YouTube channel and keep promoting the work of the veteran and indefatigable Fon Echekiye. Thank you and have a good evening.
It's a pleasure.